Welcome to Mercy's Designs. My name is Mercy and I sell Stampin' Up! Products. In today's tutorial I would like to show you how I made this card using Daisy Lane stamp set, butterfly wishes, and I also used the stitch nested label dies. So to get started we will bring in the Stamparatus, and I have, I also forgot to mention, this is the Birch background stamp. So I'm just going to put this in here, and I like to add a little strip of paper here, and I use this using the stamping trimmer. I made this using the stamping trimmer, and it just helps so I'm not stamping right at the edge of the Stamparatus. Had to think for a second there. Okay, so this is gray granite ink, and it dries nice and light, and it's kind of a beige and gray. So it's a very nice neutral. And here we have it. Okay, I'll just set this aside. And now we can begin. Now with my first card, I stamped the leaves directly on it. So what I did is I brought in a scrap of paper right here and put this at the bottom, and then started stamping. And for this one I'm going to have the stems fussy cut it out. But right now we're going to work on the Pinewood planks little box that I used here. And what I like to do, about that, is to just make my template, and then I'm just going to take my snips and let the template be my guide. Let's make sure it's straight though. It's always a good start. Okay, so once you have your template, you don't have to get too fussy about this. It's about 3/8 of an inch in here, so that is our waist. And then the last thing I'd like to do is I did sponge already on this piece of paper. But if I want to get the ends distressed, I will just hit that as well. It just adds more detail, and this is with Crumb Cake. So set that aside, and what you'll want is like a little strip of early Espresso cardstock for the top. I just think this little border just draws your eye in a little bit. So we want to get just a nice little beading going here of our glue. Grasp it here, and I'm going to wiggle it in place. And naturally that did not go so well, but it's just a little bit of glue showing there. Okay, it's not too bad. Okay, and then of course I'm going to use my paper as a guide on how to cut this. So it's a miter cut when you do that. I think that's what it's called, a miter cut. But the point is that then you have it exact, the correct angle when you let your paper guide you. So we will start building now. I did have one made up ahead of time, and I have this little brilliant plan, which is if I do make up something ahead of time, to use my silicone mat and just have it ready to go. So you don't have to see me take off dimensionals. I know it's kind of silly maybe, but it's sort of annoying to watch people take off dimensionals, I think. Not dimensionals, but the backing of the dimensionals. Okay, so here, the next part is I am going to do a little bit of stamping. So I wanted to explain a little bit about this. I am going to do a rock and roll technique for the small daisy, and you can see the detail of that. It's just darker on the edges, and I did color that in with a blend, but basically you are getting two tones because I'm using the Highland Heather for my first go. So you just stamp as usual, and then I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to try to do this at an angle so you can see. So you just go and you gently roll around the edges, and you will get some of the haloing there, but if you're careful how you stamp it and go directly down, it shouldn't be an issue. So there it is, and it turned out pretty well. Isn't that cool? It just adds a little bit of something. Okay, so I'm going to close that stamp pad up real quick because I don't want it to be a mess. Because we're now done with that color, for now anyhow. The next thing I'm going to do is do this stamping of the medium daisy, which is this one. And I have Melon Mambo here, which is a gorgeous, gorgeous color, and it's very, very intense. And if you do just two of them exactly the same, I don't think it shows it off as well. So I'm going to bring in some scrap paper and stamp off, and then stamp here, and it's a lighter generation. And that, I think, makes it more dramatic. So I'm just bringing my chamois, and I'm going to stamp here just to make sure that I get all the red off, because now we are going to switch to our other colors, which will be Pineapple Punch and Daffodil Delight. Now I could do that same technique with stamping off, but with Pineapple Punch, I found the second generation was just really too faint. So I opted instead to just simply use a different shade, but darker. Well, it's entirely different color, but Daffodil Delight is definitely darker than Pineapple Punch. So you would still get that effect of two tones. All right, and while we're at it, we'll go ahead and stamp our smile. So I'm going to bring in the gorgeous Grape, and we'll have that down here. Perfect, just enough space there. Now with the greenery, I already did that ahead of time, so you don't have to see all that step. But I used the Pear Pizzazz, which is a somewhat similar color to Old Olive, but it's a lighter shade. And I actually prefer it to Old Olive. Sorry, Old Olive fans. It's not that I dislike Old Olive, but I do feel like it's been around forever, so that kind of makes me tired of something sometimes. And also it is used a ton. It's used so much by Stampin' Up! That I feel like they've overused it. Just a little. Of course, I'm sure people would disagree with me, because obviously there's some very, very big fans of Old Olive. You can let me know in the comments below what you think. Is it overused? That should be the question. And if you think it is, let me know. If you think it isn't, that's okay too. All right, so you don't want to put a ton of blue on, just a little bit in the center there, and then you just line these up like so. Okay, and then after you're satisfied, leave it be for a sec. And this one, I'm going to do the same thing and add my second generation one in the center. And it is very similar looking, but it's definitely a little bit lighter, the second generation. Okay, so the next step I would suggest is to add some color into your center. I did try adding the light Old Olive to the center of the yellow, and I was kind of mixed a little bit about it. I don't know. It just looks maybe a little too much, but it is kind of pretty. I was kind of thinking like the, what is it, Irish Eyes daisies have green. I kind of like it actually. So, final step, ooh, sorry about that, is to curl your daisies. Very, very easy, and this will add a lot of dimension. See how pretty that is? Very cool. You just turn it, the bone folder inward to whatever you want, if you want it to curl up. Okay, so now we can start assembling our card. I'm going to go ahead and bring in the base, and we'll bring back in our little pieces here and we'll start building. So here is my greenery. I'm going to go ahead and start laying this out, a dry layout. It's what I like to do and recommend when you're doing something like this. So I want this one to be the highest. So I want it to be about there. Just going to add a little glue real quick, but hopefully not too much. And if you find that you add too much, it's sort of a problem. I just keep some scraps nearby to just take off a little bit. So I think I need to push that a little bit in. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, so again, I'm just going to glue the center here because I want those daisies to really pop up and be like singing for us, if that makes sense. That sounds kind of silly, doesn't it? All right, I'm going to cut a little bit off here because I want this one to be a little lower. And it seemed like some of my dimensionals were getting in the way for tucking this in. So I'm just going to add this, and I do like adding the middle one last because it's just easier to center, etc. So I'll just go ahead again a little bit on the center, push this down, and now the final one, this little baby one. So I'm going to tuck that in. I was careful not to put my dimensionals too high here. So here is our flower, and you can see I added the yellow to that, and it's just really pretty, the pineapple punch. And I already took the dimensional backing off, so you don't have to see that. Okay, isn't that cool? All right, so the final, well, there are more than final steps. If you like this card, please give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate that, and also consider subscribing, of course. So here we got this leaf, and I'm only adding a little glue here because I want the kind of the dimension and curl of it. Okay, so for our base inside, I am going to bring in some Whisper White, and we're going to bring in the Highland Heather, and we're going to do the big stamp, the big daisy stamp, but I want it to be like a watermark, so I'm going to stamp off and then just center this. There. Isn't that cool? So I'm going to take my tear and tape now, and I like using tear and tape for this, and the reason is it's a little bit easier than glue if you mess up to take off. You will rip some paper, but it's not too bad, especially if you use your heat tool. So if you're writing a note and make a big boo-boo, you kind of have a second chance. At least that's the way I look at it. All right, so here we go. I'm going to do it this way. Of course, it's pretty much the same. But isn't that pretty? It's just very simple, I think. Simple and elegant. That's what the look I want to go for. And this is a great encouragement card. So I am going to be sending this to somebody I know who's expecting this month. So that is very exciting, but it can be tough at the end of a pregnancy. It's very challenging. And when the baby's born too. All right, so I am going to now bring in our sentiment, which I've already die cut out with the nested label, stitch nested label, and the perennial essence vellum I used for the background in the old olive. So I'm just going to set this here, and then I'm going to bring in my bow, which I already made ahead of time by wrapping it around 2 of my fingers 3 times, and then tying it with the bow, with the string. And this is with the white baker's twine. I was really shocked that they discontinued the black baker's twine. That was really a shock to me because I love that, but for this card I think the white is perfect. So no problem that way. Okay, I'm just going to trim my tails up a little. And then we'll bring back in the original card. And I hope you found this helpful, and we'll give this planter box a try. Very simple. We'll bring in the dimensions again. It's basically 3.5 by 1 3/4, and then you cut 3/8 of an inch off for that angle. Okay, so here is the original card. I don't know, which one do you like better? Let me know. I love Highland Heather, so I'm a little bit more of a purple fan, but this yellow is so cheerful and gorgeous too. So thank you so much for watching, and please give me a thumbs up. Happy stamping. Okay, so I forgot to add the little butterfly, so I'm just gonna do that real quick. If you have any stamping needs, please email me at mewants3@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to help you place an order with the host code. Thanks again for watching. Happy stamping.